Each day at Wesley Meadows is a new opportunity to serve older adults and reimagine retirement living. It is the heart of their mission that inspires their team to provide the kind of fun atmosphere and care residents would want for themselves. Experience the warm spirit and faith-based difference of Wesley Meadows. Call 662-429-2070 and schedule your visit today. Well, hello. This is the Real Hernando podcast. I am your host, Derek, and thank you for joining us today. This podcast is presented to you by Wesley Meadows Retirement Community and SRP Studios. This podcast is created to highlight local organizations and community leaders alike, and just share their stories so we get to know them better and just to help promote their causes. We hope these stories help strengthen the fabric of this city that we love so much, Hernando. The Real Hernando. Follow us at therealhernando.com for all our channels and social media platforms. And today, I'm joined with Drake Basset, President and CEO of Palmer Home for Children, along with Annabelle, the Community Outreach Coordinator.
About as Southern as it gets.
Yeah, it's that name too, Annabelle. So I don't have a Southern accent, and you just saying your name makes me sound.
I'll have it for the both of us, okay?
Makes me sound Southern. But so yes, thank you for being here. We're here to learn more about Palmer Home and what it provides, what it's all about, the history behind it, and just try to give as much awareness and spotlighting on it because. It's important. We all love children. We need to take care of these children. But just because you're a good-sized organization in Hernando doesn't mean everyone knows about it, myself included. Yeah. So let's start there. But first, thank you, Drake, for joining us.
Happy to be here. Really appreciate the conversation.
Absolutely. And of course, Annabelle.
Yes, thank you for giving us this platform. Really, really thank you.
Absolutely. We've been building up to this. I'm excited that we could finally get in here. So
it's great.
So let's start with some history here. So what exactly, what is Palmer Home for Children and what's the genesis of it?
Well, I appreciate the conversation today because I do think there are people across Mississippi, lots of different places, and the reality is they might have heard of Palmer Home, but they may not know its history and they may not know where it's located today. And even here in Hernando, there may be folks who don't realize our presence.
I didn't either. When someone brought it up to me, I was like, I never heard of Palmer Home.
So
and it's right down the street from us.
And it's not really uncommon. The fact that we're working with children and we're working with sensitive situations sometimes means that some pieces are not, as public. But the reality is that Palmer Home's history is definitely embedded with community. And without community, Palmer Home never would have come about. So its history started in Columbus, Mississippi, 1895. So we've been around a long time.
Yeah, I would say so.
So I think that history has afforded us opportunities to, work with a lot of different situations. But I personally, as a history buff, I love seeing that trail of experiences. Coming out of the American Civil War, South had a lot of difficulty recovering, really, from that experience. And there were many families affected. And sociologists have told us that there are these key moments in time where families and children have experienced extraordinary pressure. So coming out of the American Civil War, there were many orphans. True orphans, that term gets used in different ways today, but at that time, that was the term.
No parents.
That's right, no parents.
Yeah, straight up.
And certainly families under stress. You have the Great Depression, starting in 1929. Many families were affected by that. So whenever you have these sociological factors coming down on, your economy, coming down on the families that are affected, sometimes children are affected the most. So you have things like the Great Depression, or you have, say, World War II. You have a lot of factors. And Palmer Home was introduced by people in the Columbus community, particularly in the Presbyterian Church, but all churches in the area participated in building an orphanage that really stood the test of time all the way up until we just left that campus about 4 years ago. So I think that its legacy is strong. I think the impact has been strong. But at the same time, as maybe we'll talk about, the needs have changed and Palmer Home has evolved.
Would you say the fact that it came out of Mississippi, dating all the way back to the almost said Vietnam.
Yeah, that's okay.
The Civil War, because Mississippi's rich in the history of the Civil War. Do you think that's why it started here?
Yes, if you look across the southern states, you see the emergence of other similar like programs in Louisiana, Alabama, Florida, and many of them are rooted in about the same time frame. And if you do the math, you're looking at 15 years removed from the end of that war, that conflict. Finally organizing resources and being able to respond to that need. When those things happen, they're not a one-off. They don't happen for a year or two. They change cultures and they change the population in different ways.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I see here, one of your commitments is towards becoming trauma competent.
Yes.
So Anna, could you explain a little more what that means?
Absolutely. So kind of to come back a little bit to what Drake was saying. So early 2000s is when we moved kind of from Columbus purchasing the land here in Hernando. And so a big pivotal moment, creating an anchor here in DeSoto County, and choosing that location for many reasons. But starting this Hernando campus for our kids, we initially started with 3 cottages, Hope Chapel, and a Grace Home for the campus director. So early 2000s was another big pivotal moment. And then 2014 to 17, we added 3 other cottages and a separate cove. And so a lot of things were happening early 2000s. But another big pivotal moment here recently was in 2019, though, to really solidify our 4 main service lines, as well as get started on what is now today our Dr. Hugh Francis Jr. Wellness Center. And so, I'm really excited to jump in and be on board to, share that with the community because, again, not well known and something we want to use this podcast and platform to share. But in talking about that growth, not just for our buildings and things on campus, we are working towards moving past trauma awareness to a fully trauma competent organization.
So when you say trauma, is that almost like therapy and counseling for the kids after going through such a rough patch and in a way kind of experiencing their own PTSD?
Yeah.
Exactly right. Numerous situations, numerous scenarios. Trauma is measured a lot of different ways. The very idea that a child might need to come out of a family situation and be somewhere else, that alone is a degree of trauma that says, hey, that's not how it's supposed to be. But if you look at that and compound it with other factors that are emotionally difficult to move through. So whether that was emotional abuse or verbal abuse or it was physical abuse or other kinds of abuse, if you're coming out of like we said, a pressure-oriented situation, people respond to that differently. And, sometimes families are simply doing the best that they can, but when the wheels come off or when circumstances get complicated, Palmer Home has always been there to say, we're here to help you, we're here to help your family, and if for a period of time we need to care for that child, we will. How we care for the child is, I think, what we're talking about here when we talk about becoming trauma competent.
Yeah, it's more than just giving them shelter.
Yeah, way beyond that. Yeah. Well, and I appreciate it truly because I come from a journalism background. Not all of our staff, we come from a variety of different experiences. And so the fact that we're offering not only our caregivers, but our staff trauma training, which I've recently gone through, and making sure we're continuing that education, it's so important because while I don't interact with the kids daily, I might pass them in the hall every now and then. And so what might be a warm hug between you and I, another trusted adult, might not feel the exact same way to a child that has experienced trauma. And we define trauma as this, a person's emotional response to a distressing experience. And so, it was amazing in the trauma training to hear that, most adults, about half the adults actually in the United States, have gone through at least one adverse childhood experience. We call that an ACE.
ACEs.
That's right, adverse childhood experience. And so going through that traumatic stress can lead to, a really negative long-term medical, behavioral, and social outcome. And so what that really essentially means is that a child that might be having a tantrum because we didn't have food on the table at 6 o'clock on the dot, there might be a really deep-rooted underlying cause for that.
It's a specific trigger.
That's right, exactly, from an experience that they've had. So that trauma training is so important for our staff, and me particularly. I was amazed. Lauren Strickland is our director over our whole child who led this initiative, and she showed us 2 brain scans of 2 children, one with a relatively healthy upbringing, and then another who had gone through a significant trauma. And it really is amazing to see the child with a healthy upbringing. It's lit up like a Christmas tree. It's full of activity and that creative thinking brain, whereas a child that has gone through that severe trauma, they're really only using that survival portion of their brain. And it really is. It helps you better understand, that child and what they're going through, that there might be something way below the surface of what that, maybe tantrum,
that science
might be.
Is wild.
It really is.
And they do it now with CTE and, and athletes and stuff.
Lots of ways to measure the brain and see where the impact is. And so, I think that's one of the misnomers of caring for children. And even for an organization like ours that's been doing it for a long time, I think we acknowledged that, we know more today. And that if we could find a way to equip all of our staff to some degree, because a lot of times these things kind of get assigned to the counselor, or they get assigned to a therapist, and it's true that they do deep dive work. But what you're really talking about is creating an environment where everybody's aware that the children in our care have probably experienced some sort of adverse circumstance, and you just can't make assumptions.
Right.
And you also want to be trained in thinking about what we call 3 values that are really, really important. Felt safety. If children feel safe, that's when you can begin to connect. And when they begin to connect with you, and we get to have a relationship, now I can begin to support you. What would you like to become? What school would you like to go to? What things would you like to be in life? Would you like to play ball? Whatever those questions are, most of those come in our life out of environments where children and families feel safe together. And they've already built that connection. But when you think about a child or a set of siblings that have been dropped off to us and we're starting from scratch,
there's a trust factor.
There's a trust factor that we're
Absolutely.
working on. And so training everybody in our organization to understand that that's how we do this, that moves us towards not just being aware of it. I can read about trauma in the news, but being competent to say, bring us that child because we are ready. Equipped to use our resources and the buildings and the different things. We're ready to use that to help this child untangle some of the past and get ready for the future.
Yeah, it's one thing as an overview, having the knowledge on how to handle children depression or anxiety, but you got to learn each kid, like you mentioned earlier.
I'm so glad you're saying that.
There's maybe a child that freaks out if the food's not there in the morning, but is okay most other times.
Right.
Why?
Why?
Okay.
Why?
So each kid's going to be different, right? So now you got to learn how to just dig in on each kid.
That's right.
And then use
Every
your
child
skills.
is unique. So must be our service to each and every child. That's part of our mission. We have to care for each individual child, meet them where they are, and just show them the love of God through our service to each child. So I think that's a good segue into our different service lines.
Yes, I see. Campus care, foster care, family care, and transitional care.
Absolutely.
Right? So,
I would say campus care is our bread and butter, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, historically, when people think Palmer Home for Children, well, immediately the word home is in there. And so, and if you hear that anywhere else, you think of the traditional big building. And we did have a traditional big building for, the first 100 years of our existence.
Actually, the formal charter was Palmer Orphanage. And so now in the 70s, it changed to Palmer Home to better represent what we're
who we
offering
are.
the kids.
yeah,
That's
and I think
right.
orphanage might have a certain kind of connotation
It
to
is.
it.
You're picturing the Dickensian, scenario and all of that.
Home is a very inviting word.
That's right.
That's the idea. People, children do need a place to call home.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that, just as we are as adults, if you don't have your home and you're kind of you realize how disconnected you are from some stability.
That's right.
I think that's people's perception, though, Palmer Home for Children, when in fact, we've shifted gears based on some of this knowledge that we've gained around trauma and other pieces. that there's a time and a place to come out of maybe a crisis or a chaotic environment and come to something like our campus, which is beautiful, it's remote, it's got the pieces and the tools that we need to bring everything down and let them be at peace and let them begin to build that trust.
You got to stabilize.
You got to stabilize.
Yeah.
You do. When you come out of a hot zone, the reality is, okay, you've got to find a way to bring that to where you can build. And as we build, we immediately begin looking at maybe the possibility of a foster family, so that once this environment has provided certain things, now a foster family can do that. Our foster service line allows us to serve children in different ways, and those children find that stability. They find some things that they may not find necessarily in the campus environment, and so that's been really powerful. Yeah. Our campus allows us to take lots of kids, and what I mean by that is very few agencies can call up and say, hey, from a foster care standpoint, would you take 5 kids tonight?
That's
right?
Quite the
quite the charter. Well, we just recently took in a set of siblings out of Memphis that needed a place. They'd been living in very difficult circumstances, and social services called us up basically and said, we have 8 siblings. Can you take them? Well, 2 things. Number one, yes, we can take them. We made adjustments and we made that happen. But think how important it is for siblings to stay together.
Yeah.
When your world's coming apart, if you and I were brothers, and all I know is you're going somewhere and I'm going somewhere else.
That's sad.
Now I'm on my own.
Heartbreaking.
But at least if I've got you and I can see you there, so these siblings stay together, and that's really, really important.
One of the most beautiful things I think there is for Palmer Home is offering that for sibling groups. For campus, like Drake was saying, 50 is our capacity for on campus, creeping up close to that right now. But there are these 6 cottages, and don't let that name fool you. It's a 7,000 square foot, gorgeous residential home.
Sounds just like my apartment.
Oh yeah,
That's right.
it is. But we're creating that
Now that I
home.
know that, I'll send you a lot of kids.
There you go. We're creating that home, though. They're seeing a husband-wife house-parent team with most of the time their biological children in one wing, and then they have another wing where it's 8 to 10 Palmer Home children. Jack and Jill style bedrooms, but they receive their own bed. They receive a bike when they come onto campus and a Bible. Those foundational things just to remind them, hey, you get to be a kid. Let go of that maternal, paternal role that you've had to play now. And just come out here and be a child again. Yeah. And so it's really neat to see these kids kind of come alive and ride their bikes and be kids.
Once that all calms down, think about it. Getting to ride a bike and some kids seeing our cattle for the first time. They've been out in the country and they're just seeing how this all works. But just to realize that there will be food tonight. There will be a place to stay. There are clothes to wear. The electricity is going to stay on. There will be heat. There will be cool, whatever. Basic things that you and I would assume are just part of our normal daily thing. Yeah. This becomes the consistency in the landscape and the sense of peace and calm, and allows us then to begin to do the educational assessment.
That's right.
Children that have been knocked out of school for 3 or 4 years for a different reason.
You've got some catching up to do.
You got some big time catching up to do.
Right.
So all of those things can happen in an environment where everybody feels safe.
And I know how important my bike was.
I know.
I mean, seriously.
As a kid,
It was your life, right?
It was my life.
Your transportation, right?
Bicycle and Legos. That was it. And I grew up an only child, so I was bored a lot.
Yeah.
So it really meant a lot.
Oh, absolutely. And these kids that we're receiving calls for are across the country. That's something a lot of people don't realize. We've got children from across, so 128-year legacy, we've got connections and resources, and now a variety of different ways for people to reach out to us and ask, take the courage and make the call,
I think that's a great thing, because when you realize, think about it, you don't expect to be in a chaotic situation, but if you're in that chaotic situation, you're like, what do I do?
Right.
Who do I call?
Right.
The only thing you know is what you know. And maybe somebody will say, hey, maybe you ought to try Palmer Home for Children. But there's no 1-800 number, in the universe. Maybe we'll build it someday. But we would like for it to be, accessible to people. So our social network, being able on social media and people seeing that, we get calls from California, Boston, Nebraska, North Dakota, with families saying, could you help us? And that's what we're there for.
Palmer Home, what is it? What's the PalmerHome.org?
That's
I'm
right.
supposed to say that on the front.
PalmerHome.org.
So that's the hub. That's
All
if you
this is
just
there.
go there, and then
That's
you can
right.
find what you need.
Yes.
Exactly. Those resources are there.
Yeah.
And two, kind of talking about education for a minute, we've got 3 options for our kiddos on campus, depending on their educational assessments that happen with that intake call.
Mm-hmm.
And so, depending on their needs, we've got a public school option with a little bit larger classroom, a private school option, again, a little smaller setting. But now, as of this year for 2023, we've started Palmer School. So that is truly a one-on-one type classroom. We've got 4 children
Nice.
in there
It's
with
like
one
tutoring,
teacher.
almost like tutoring.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's tutoring in the afternoon for all of our kids, but then some kids actually go there in the morning and they start their day and they'll do some online classes. We have professional teachers who are there. And again, you know what it was like when you were 12 and 13 and you were just trying to make your way. Well, you know how much more complicated that is if you're 12 and 13 and you can't read
Yes.
or if you can't do math.
You get like a
and somehow or
third grade
another
level.
Yeah, and you're trying to get by. And I've seen those kids come home with the black eyes and stuff like that because when you start to make fun of kids are tough on each
Yeah.
other.
Yeah.
And if they find out your weakness, we're going to let you have it.
And they're already coming in with such a
Yeah, exactly.
high pressure.
Yeah.
We can build that
situation.
confidence
Yeah.
with one-on-one training. But we also have a lot of ladies and men in DeSoto County and tutors talking about that. And our Title I program through DeSoto County Schools allow us to have Monday to Thursday afternoon tutoring for all the kids wherever they are.
If you want to brush up on your stuff, you can come by too. We'll help you. We'll work with you.
I'm not a reader, so I could probably
There you
use
go.
it. I'm visual.
Well, I think that the overall point though is that when we began Whole Child, we really thought about every child, as Annabelle has said, that every child is unique, and every child is going to have strengths. And we want to build on those.
That's right.
And wherever they're struggling in certain areas, we want to reinforce those. But you do have to stop and look at each of those areas. So for us, we look at their social skills and are they able to feel comfortable, their educational skills, their emotional, physical needs. Some of the kids I just mentioned here recently are going to the dentist for the first time. And so when people donate to us, they're thinking, okay, I hope it's helping. They need to realize it's that practical. We are taking kids to doctors for the first time or to the dentist. And then for us, we're faith-based. There's a spiritual dimension, which is this may be the first time they've ever considered or heard or thought. We don't cram things down kids. That's not successful. We already talked about building trust. So what we talk about, people talk about the gospel, and I think it's important. Our kids hear the gospel when they see the gospel. If they can see us in action, serving them, loving them, being patient with them, being kind, that allows for that trust to grow, and they can learn more as we go.
The famous saying is, "I'll believe it when I see it," but really, it's "I'll see it when I believe it."
You got it.
Once you
got it.
prove it to them, oh, I see it now.
Yes,
Absolutely.
yes.
Yeah.
These are seeds that we're sowing right now. We may never see come to fruition.
Yeah.
But the truth is we're giving them that love that they deserve, reminding them they were designed with a purpose. No mistakes.
Gustafson Properties. Gustafson Properties has been building beautiful custom homes in DeSoto County and surrounding areas for over 20 years. Are you ready to build your new custom home? Call us today at 662-449-6271.
So, obviously, it's all about the kids here, but would you mind talking on the other side? When it comes to the foster parents, so the foster homes.
Yeah.
Let's talk vetting, if you will, but also can we now educate, if any parents are out here interested in fostering, what does that look like for them?
Love that because, as we mentioned, we can take children into our campus and we can do all the things we've been talking about. But we do need partners. We do need families who are willing to say, we're willing to consider this and we'd like to learn. And you can go online and find out about our interest meetings that you can participate in virtually. You can certainly schedule to come out to our campus and sit down and talk with us. The difference for us is when people hear foster care, it's like, okay, that's got people have a lot of preconceived. What we're after are people who are willing to take a look at their life, and we've had plenty of people do it, and basically say, we want to get to know the child. We don't just say, here's your child. What we say is, you're going to be a period of time where you get the opportunity to mentor that child,
Right.
Maybe spend a Saturday afternoon getting to know each other, for weeks and weeks and months, and then slowly, when that feels right, we will have gone through a background check, we will have gone through some training, we will have done a lot of conversation to make sure that this is a good fit.
Right.
One of the things we're trying to avoid is the problem that we're trying to solve, which is children bouncing around all over the place. So if we can keep that very low, in our mind, one and done.
And certainly not
right,
throw
that's
them in
right.
another stressful situation.
Exactly.
You're
No.
compounding scar tissue when you do that.
You
You,
are.
know what I mean? So yes, these foster families are going through an intensive, 3 to 6 month home study.
Yep.
We've got great individuals to help them and find the right child, like Drake was saying. And those families are Greater Memphis area and to the South and Central Mississippi. We've got them all around. So, and thankful that they're open in their hearts and homes.
They are.
Because not all kids do well in a group home setting, and we realize that we need to have those nuclear settings for some kids.
We've got one young girl I remember from years ago. It was the first month I was interviewing for the job, and this is over 10 years ago now. But she was a little girl, and she came up and she wanted to meet me, and we shook hands, and my wife was there, and we were all at a picnic together and everything, and she just kind of kept hanging around. And after a while, I remember sitting on my knee, and we were just talking about different things, and everything was good. Well, today, okay, she was on our campus for a period of time. Now she's thriving with a foster family. And I love seeing the updates. I love seeing the pictures. This young lady's going to graduate high school. She's going to go on to her future. And I can just see that journey, and it all started with trust on the campus and providing certain resources. And then she found the right family, and she's been with that family.
It's a rebuilding.
Yeah.
Right?
Rebuilding,
It really is.
creating a new
That
life.
process.
Yeah.
You start with that
is.
foundation.
Oh.
What's going on here?
Yeah.
Okay.
And build from there.
And talk about foundation. That's a good way into our family care service
Sure.
line, because that is from birth. This is kind of a satellite from in Nashville, Tennessee. Not everybody really knows about.
Okay, so you take kids in brand new.
Well, there's a
newborn.
circumstance, and I'll let Anna share a story here in just a moment. But we came across a great group of people who were doing a lot of great work inside of one of the prisons in Tennessee, and this is Tennessee Women's Prison. And if you think about it, because we don't think about it very often, I didn't. When women are convicted at times and they're sent to jail, and then they discover that they're pregnant. Okay, what's going to happen with that baby?
Right.
And if that's a 3-year sentence or a 5-year sentence or whatever it is, the point is that the trust had been built, and we really loved the work that they were doing. So they became a part of our work. We hope to replicate this same offering in Mississippi in time. But the idea is, here is a woman who must serve her sentence, and she needs someone to care for that baby when the baby's born. There's not always a family option. The other option is the state. Child will become a ward of the state. So maybe not very many options.
Right.
So we're there. We step in.
I don't think
Right.
it's very good. I don't want to downplay what the state can do, but I think
No.
there's a bad reputation there, right?
There is. I mean, and in all fairness, and maybe this is just my view of it, but I don't think government was ever set out to raise kids.
They weren't built for that.
They weren't built for that. They've got 2 or 3 other key functions, and they need to stay on that.
Yeah.
So families that understand those dynamics and groups like ours, so we're blessed with people who want to volunteer to not only be there when the baby's born, care for that baby, bring that baby to visit the mother on a regular basis. Think about that biological connection.
The mother doesn't lose the child.
No.
So when-
And that's such a big deal because
That's huge.
that's what they're afraid of, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to lose my child. I'll never see my child again. So it's such a priority for us to stay connected with the mother.
Cool. Yeah.
And the mother is also kind of in that whole story. So when she comes out, there's a partnership there. Our goal is to reunify them.
Always.
I never thought of that.
Yeah.
A woman being detained and then also being pregnant.
Exactly.
It's
That goes for all of our children across the
It does.
board, every service line, reunification, as long as it's safe and healthy. That's the ultimate goal.
Yeah.
But I do have one lady, a mother from our family care line, who had the courage to share her story. I'd love to share that with you
Go
too,
for it,
because
yeah.
her words are better than my own. But she was sharing that she didn't have an easy childhood. As a young adult, she abused drugs and got into trouble with the law. But she had found God, prayed for Him to turn her life around. But her past came back around, and so past choices came back to her, and she was arrested and sentenced to prison soon after finding out she was pregnant. So her words are, being pregnant in prison is terrible. There's no pink or blue, no baby showers or celebrations. The larger my belly grew, the more panicked I became. Who was going to take care of my baby while I finished my sentence? What was going to happen to us? I continually cried out to God for help, and one day, when I was at my lowest point, another inmate overheard my fears and told me about Palmer Home for Children. She said they provided families for babies born to mothers in prison until the mom was able to serve her time. And I was able to then care for my child, so God was answering my prayers. As the weeks passed, I got to know the Palmer Home Family Care Director and the family that would ultimately care for my baby. They were all so kind and understanding, but I knew God had handpicked them for my baby. I delivered a healthy baby girl, but had to return to my prison cell after 24 hours, and it was heartbreaking. But knowing my baby girl was in the care of a loving family gave me strength. They brought her to see me every week, mailed me pictures, and let us talk over the phone. They made sure our bond was growing. Every encounter gave me hope that there would be a day we'd be together again. So fast forward to today, I've been released from prison and reunited with my daughter. Palmer Home for Children is still part of our lives, and we consider them an amazing extended family. And so I tell everyone that when they support Palmer Home, they're helping change lives like ours. Through Palmer Home, God took my mess and made it into a miracle. I think that's so powerful because it really is at the root of what we're doing. It's providing hope and healing in a family's time of greatest need. You know?
And that could have changed the prisoner's life.
Oh my goodness.
Add a new perspective.
Really has.
You're like, you know
you
what?
can tell. She tells this story frequently in different places. And, you know, I think that's what I realized in listening to some of the voices of women in prison was that's for all of us. You know, we think we're in control of things till we're not in control of things.
Yeah.
And then as soon as we're not, what do we need what? We need help. In other words, if I can't handle it, then I'm totally dependent on somebody else. We talk a lot about grace, and that is exactly what grace is. In any context, it's something that you can't do, and someone else decides to give it to you, and there's nothing you've done to earn it, or you can pay. You know, these prisoners can't do it. They're totally dependent on whether or not we choose to facilitate this program, train and equip people, and mobilize their hearts as much as anything to say, will you help this person?
Yeah, but they have zero control.
They have zero control.
Zero.
And so the power of it when it comes back like this is to say, man, if we can do this over and over, if we can help anybody in need like this, that's really the idea, hope and healing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so is there some kind of vetting once the mother comes out of prison?
Absolutely.
You know,
And partnering. You know, there are programs that we partner with who help women get on their feet, who come to a safe place, and also the experience of being with their child for the first time. They haven't really been, you know, the day and get up every night kind of thing with a mother. When the baby leaves the hospital, that other family's going to deal with that as the child grows, right?
Yeah.
So now this woman is going to learn how to be a mother and learn how to stand on her 2 feet and get her job and all those things. So there's a
mother
period.
needs to be rebuilt too.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's right.
Yeah. And we've seen some
right.
great partnerships where it really just becomes, and that's why this part of our work is called family care. You know, it really is about caring for the family that's involved and trying to keep that family together. Because we do know this, that children that are separated from that family unit, that's where the factors go negative. That's where your statistics are full of children who self-harm, they drop out of school, all of that. We're countering that culture and we're trying to break those trends. So if we can keep a family together, that's one more family that's staying together and has a much better chance of being productive in the world and enjoying life.
That's right.
So one last thing, and then I want to start talking about how people can visit, and it's real call to action here. But I'm genuinely curious because foster care and adoption's different.
Very much
You're
so.
Right? So earlier you mentioned that this girl's thriving and she's going to graduate high school as a foster child. But it seems to me she's going to be a foster into adulthood.
Right.
So is there option to adopt?
Yeah.
Or if not, that they can still be just a
great
foster
question.
child through
They sure
their
can.
childhood? And how does that work as far as the parents, adoption gives the parents more rights?
Yeah.
You know, how does that all work?
It's really a great question because sometimes people say, well, why is this, why that, you know? So our first step is fostering. And if that's going really well, we've had children speak to our case manager to say, I would love to be adopted by this family. We've had families come and say, we would love to adopt, you know, him or her at the right time. So a couple of things. We certainly make sure that we continue the vetting process in the sense of, okay, fostering is one thing. If you want to adopt this child, we're going to talk about that. But
Because as a foster, you still have control to step in.
we do. That's right.
Once adopted?
Once adopted, it's not us anymore.
Right.
So it's a really big decision. But we've also had the benefit of this whole period of time to see how this is going, right? So that's usually 2-3 years. Another factor that's involved in that is legal. So whether or not we have complete control of custody of a child, or if there's still shared custody with the original biological family or whoever has custody of the child. So sometimes it's not a question of desire, it's a question of the legal status of a child.
You might not have the option.
Yeah,
That's
but
right.
I will tell you that in the past 10 years, we have seen a number of these foster cases move to successful adoption.
Yeah.
And we've been a part of that, and we've had great help with civic leaders as well as attorneys and other people who see the good that's happening and they just want to seal the deal. And so when that happens, it's a wonderful
Celebration.
thing.
Yeah,
It is
yeah.
a celebration. Yeah.
It must feel good when you know that you hit a home run with a family.
That's
and,
right.
And you can really trust that
Yep.
the child is going
Yeah,
to be.
and we just see that, and even today they continue to thrive. So that becomes that bond that gets even tighter. And you never replace. I mean, truthfully, you never replace your biological connection. That's always real, and so we keep that in perspective, and we do everything we can to see if that can happen. But when it can't, we want to coach that child to come to terms with their reality. We've seen some children be adopted and still reach out to their biological family to cultivate some kind of friendship, some kind of relationship. Every opportunity we can to heal, we want to grab that.
Right, absolutely.
So I'm sorry.
don't want to
go
overlook,
ahead,
Derek, too.
Aaron.
We have a transitional service line that's,
Oh, yeah.
it's one of our newest service lines, and it's really important. It's for kids 18 to 24. So the state says at 18 that you're an adult. I don't know about you, but at 18, I didn't know what I was going to
had it all
do.
figured out.
We thought you did.
Follow.
We thought you
I'm
did.
45 and I still don't.
Yeah, so why should these kids?
Yeah.
So they have the option. We've got 2 homes in Hernando, a male and a female home, for them to be able to reside and continue education should they choose. We're able to help them with scholarships and grants.
That's amazing.
Or if they'd like to go in the military, we've got resources to help them with that. Or a trade, we've got, again, so many connections that we can put them in touch with. But I've heard Drake call it our 4th quarter, and I love that too. I think
Yeah.
that's
We play 3/4 of the game, all these phases, and then this is the biggest quarter of all, honestly, for their life, because
It's not 18 years old and, all right,
yeah.
get
them
out
out
of
of the
here.
nest.
You're good to go.
Yeah.
And we think just because they turn 18, they, okay, you should figure it all out.
Yeah, you're on your own, buddy.
But we know that that's not the case, and we also know that perhaps maybe at that point where they've left very safe environments, and now they're learning new things, they're learning life,
Getting
first
their
apartment,
legs,
first
yeah.
job, whatever that is.
Yeah.
So, a few years ago, we decided to dedicate a team to help that. And a child can volunteer into that program. We're happy that we have over 20 children in that program today. And some are going to college, some are, like she said, different jobs or whatever. And when they mess up, they come home and they say, I messed up, I need help.
Yeah.
And we're there for that push and pull. But that famous movie with Hanks, I think Castaway.
Wow, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Love that movie.
Every time I see the scene where he's trying to get off the island, he's built this boat. He's trying to get over those waves, and he keeps getting knocked back. When he finally gets over that wave, that's exactly what's happening in our transitional program. They might get knocked back a few times, but sooner or later they're going to get over that wave, and guess what? They don't need our care in the same way. They're truly independent. They can go into life and they'll do great things. Absolutely. But that transitional, that 4th quarter, if it's not there and they turn 18, well, it's really hard
It
without
could
help.
regress.
Regress,
right.
yeah. So why did we do all that if we're not going to help them here? So
Right.
now we're helping them there.
absolutely.
So I mentioned call to action, which we're going to get to, but I just realized there's another form of call to action here, and that's, what's the future hold? And then that way we can, hopefully, people will be inspired to help donate.
Yeah.
So if people really, new donations come in and you're putting it towards future goals, what do those goals look like?
I think the simplest way to think of it is three. There are 3 things that Palmer Home stands for today, above and beyond what we always have. The programs that we just outlined, that's how we're truly helping children every single day, whether it's on our campus or in foster care or in the transitional program or helping women who are in prison. Those programs will continue, and your gifts go towards that. A second block is this whole child approach, whole child initiative. That's not only beneficial to us, that's beneficial to community, that's beneficial to schools, that's beneficial to other programs. And so as we continue to refine that and we continue to gain the benefits that will help other people who are working with children, and many of them out there have experienced trauma, then if we're able to continue to fuel the benefits of whole child, that's great. Third area, and I think Anna's going to talk about this, is our wellness center. We didn't just build it for us, and we didn't just build it for the children in our care. Over time, we would love to be able to create some services to people right here in DeSoto County, right here in Hernando, who want to learn how to be a better parent or want to learn about what trauma means. And maybe what is social media doing to our young people? Yeah. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Hey, come on, let's just talk about it. And how do you coach a child around these kinds of things? Well, we can make that happen. We've got a beautiful facility. Right. We've got the ability to receive people into from the public and still keep the privacy of our children. We've created it it was designed that way. So those are opportunities that I see, especially for the Wellness Center and in this area, as a fixture, as a hub, as a learning center, as an opportunity to continue to send the light that, hey, there's hope, there's healing, and there's opportunity for all of us to learn new things in ways that we can help each other.
Absolutely.
I like the aspect of educating the parents.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because they might be a good home, but they might need help on.
Oh, absolutely.
They might provide a great home.
Yeah.
They're financially stable, but maybe they don't know how to deal with a kid that has trauma.
I have 4 grown children. I have a few grandchildren these days, but I have learned more about what I could have done while I had my children in my home in the past 5, 7, 10 years. Just looking at all of this, realizing that even though my children were provided for and cared for, and just as you said, everything's good, but I didn't really know all that I had in my care. I was just shooting from the hip, doing the best I could. I modeled my parents. My wife modeled her family, and that's what you get.
And you get a career, and you get all these distractions.
And here I am on the other opposite.
Yeah, she's ready to raise her.
I've got 2 small ones, but look, that continued education piece is so vital.
It's insightful.
And I'm in a wonderful atmosphere to continue to learn these things.
How old are your kids?
7 and 4. So I'm on the hamster wheel right now. But yeah, like Drake said, now we've got these spaces to open up that dialogue with the community, that the community can use those spaces. So in our gorgeous 25,000 square foot facility, Dr. Hugh Francis Jr. Wellness Center, there's a boardroom that would be perfect for small businesses that might be listening to come out and have their meetings. We've got a gathering place comfortably holding 140, max 175 individuals. Great for a networking luncheon to be able to use, but then counseling suite too, like intimate conversations can be had.
Yeah, opportunities.
That's right.
And I think about that. I was in business for 20 years before I got over into nonprofit, and I see so many of these principles related to how we work with children. It's really interesting. They apply to the business environment. You could bring a leadership team out, and we could give you an hour worth of principles that you go, oh wow, that's how we're doing this right here. It
works everywhere.
It really does, because it's all about being a human. It's all about being having a desire to be connected, to be valued, to feel safe. Let's talk about the workplace. Do people feel safe in the workplace? Sure they do. If you provide it, if you create it, are you connected? All of those kinds of things. So it's really interesting that the world of children teaches us a lot about the world of being adults. They're connected.
I think there should be a special program for parents on how to get through middle school.
Oh, yeah.
Mine's 14.
Okay.
So I can tell you all kinds of things.
Put that in my
what to
back
look
pocket,
for.
huh?
That's right.
What to expect. Don't worry. You get past it.
Yeah.
That's right.
It's like going over that wave.
Yeah, it sure is.
yeah.
Yeah. You're not sure who's going to survive.
Oh, man. But because, the age groups mean everything. So you're dealing with hormones too through all this child awareness.
I appreciate your focus on Hernando. And I grew up, part of my childhood was over in Cordova.
Okay.
And so I've been Tennessee, Kentucky, and all those years. And I think one of the things that, this community, the world around us is experiencing is a bit of a cultural change. A lot of assumptions we make about, that's what it's like when you go to school.
Yeah.
Very different. For me, that was nearly 50 years ago, or it was 50 years ago. Trust me, it's different in elementary school than it was when I,
And 15 years ago, I'll speak to that.
Yeah.
So I think for families who, and especially this community that's so tight together and cares about similar things, doesn't mean there isn't an opportunity to go, oh, we need some insight on this. We need to know that this is changing because whether it's media or any number of factors, that is influencing the world we live in. So we can help with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of ways to get involved with Palmer Home.
Let's
I'd
do
love
it.
to plug those if we can.
Yeah, well, let's talk about how to visit. I've seen the
Oh,
facility; it's amazing. So we're gonna have
Thank you for saying that.
We're gonna have links along with how to get the newsletter, the general website palmerhome.org, and also a link on how to schedule a visit.
That's right.
That's how that happens. So what does that
come
look
actually
like?
directly to me, and so it's a smart sheet. Just look through, fill out if you want the full tour of the wellness center, and what date and time's best for you. Be looking for me to reach back out and confirm those times. I'd be honored to have anybody come out and tour and kind of share more in depth on how to get involved. 150 acres out on campus. There's no shortage on things to get done and do, and it really takes everyone being the hands and feet to help keep us focused on the mission. So whether it's a family of 4, a group of teenagers at school, a business that's willing to just
volunteer.
That's right, volunteer a few hours of their time. We would certainly appreciate that. Another thing for businesses, if you've got an opportunity for youth employment, if there's a possibility for an internship, for a part-time kind of position so our kids can continue their school. But yes.
We need to talk about that.
Yeah, please reach out to us and let us know. I'd love to partner in that way too. But another thing for businesses is to, attend our fundraisers. We've got a few fundraisers throughout the year.
You just had one, right?
That's right.
What
we had
was that?
the Shoot for Hope Clays
Which
tournament
is so,
on campus.
So
that was
bizarre.
great.
The fundraiser was shooting clays.
That's right.
Yeah.
Hey, we're in the South, right? You got to remember, don't you?
We had a good crowd.
But it brought people though.
It did.
It brought
We had a great
A lot
group.
of fun. Got to come out. Kept it on a part of campus, away from some. We have space, so that helps us. And
150
and,
acres.
those are great ways to connect.
That's
and
right.
shake hands and get to know. And then people say, "Hey, tell me about the garden here. We have an agricultural program. Tell me about the cattle that they saw across."
lends
All these
itself
things.
to
It just all starts to come
conversation.
together. So we love for people to come out. And see
Well,
us.
Mudbug Bash is coming up.
Mudbug's coming.
That's April 22nd. It's presented by Skylight Construction, and so that's a big one. There's a few tickets left, so if you're able to jump in on that one.
It's right here on the square.
Right here on the Hernando Town Square.
Nice.
And then Radiothon is happening in July 13th. That's another fun one.
What's
we work with.
Radiothon?
Yeah,
What is
Super
that?
Talk Radio. It's a great one.
Super Talk Radio came to us years ago. We're now in our 10th, 11th year, and they basically, there's a lot of politics in their sports and all that kind of stuff. And what they do is they shut it down for one day, bring all the same broadcasters, and they allow us to tell our story. And we tell story from from kids who've been there before, and they come on, or other people that are involved. And it is an all day. So they basically gift us that, and it's a relationship that means a lot to us. And people all over Mississippi here, that's what's going on.
Yeah.
The best part about it is no matter what happens that day, people giving money and things like that, seems like invariably we hear from a family or two that didn't know about us and say, hey, we need to talk to you. And so apart from the joy of sharing our story and kind of communing with all of Mississippi, because this is Mississippi's nonprofit. It's not, doesn't belong to any of us. Mississippi has made this possible. And so, and many other people across the country, I don't want to dismiss that, but its core is right here in Mississippi. But when people reach out and say, I've got a situation, would you help me? That's a huge benefit. We've had children come to us by way of the radiothon.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That really
and
is
podcasts
awesome.
like this.
Well, I was
That's
going to say,
absolutely.
radio is old. Podcast is where it's at. I'll give you
This
2
is
days.
cool.
I'll give you 2 days.
You got it, man.
No, but that's
We
why
love
you're
that.
here, though.
Well, we thank you for that.
This is what I love. I love spotlighting people like yourself and organizations like yourself. Just a few weeks ago, I had John Hornsby from Hernando Meals on Wheels.
It's great.
It's really good. It's
is.
granular community. I had the new head librarian.
Oh, I love that.
awesome.
So it's fun for me to do that. So, this won't be the last time we work together.
Wonderful.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Happy to come and talk. We thank you.
Yeah.
My
Sincerely.
pleasure.
Yeah.
My pleasure, and I'm glad we crossed paths.
Me too.
Annabelle. We're gonna see each other next week. We're in the same BNI group.
That's
There
right.
you go. Promo.
But because of the BNI is how
That's
I got
true.
my visit, and I can say it's just such a clean,
Wonderful
environment.
group.
It's really professionally done. I really enjoyed seeing it,
Yeah.
But my one complaint, like I said off camera, was you got to bring the basketballs out.
Oh yeah.
So anyone that visits, you let them shoot some
Grab-
We're gonna do
grab a
that. We're gonna do
basketball.
that. Well, I tell you what, you bring the B&I group out there for a
There you
luncheon,
go.
or a breakfast or whatever. You'll get a
make
brand
it
new
happen.
basketball.
Well, awesome. Look, I appreciate Drake, Annabelle. Thanks for doing this. Thanks
Glad
for
to
coming
do
up to the
it. Very
studio.
happy to talk to you.
And look, so one more thing before we say goodbye. We need also to spread the word. We need to get some reach on Palmer Home, and we can
That's
do
right.
that in 5 ways. Go to the website, therealhernando.com, and subscribe. All it's asking for is your email, and it just gives you the next episode when it publishes. And then while you're in there, find this episode, click it, grab that URL, and share it. Email it to friends, throw it on your Facebook, however you can spread it is tremendous. Also, you can go to our YouTube channel, and so you can actually watch us. A lot of people listen, but we're also video-based. And there, share those. Follow our socials, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all at The Real Hernando. And while you're in iTunes, go leave a rating and a review. That helps boost us up. And ultimately, supporting everything I just said ultimately supports people like Drake and Annabelle and Palmer Home, which then supports Hernando. It's full circle, right?
It really is.
So you can find us on Spotify, YouTube, Stitcher, Audible, iHeartRadio, and always, much like going to palmerhome.org, where you can find everything. For this podcast, therealhernando.com is the hub. That's where you can find everything. So
Awesome.
thanks, guys. I
Yeah.
appreciate
Thank you.
Thank you.
it. All right.